For years, David Begnaud has been one of the country's most trusted storytellers, reporting from the front lines of America's biggest moments. But lately, he's been leaning even further into the stories that inspire. Through Do Good Crew and his new podcast, The Person Who Believed in Me, he's highlighting the people whose kindness, encouragement, and belief in others leave a lasting mark. This is Kirkpatrick and Company, presented by Catalyst Bank.
David Begnaud, welcome to the Vault, virtually at least. It's good to see you.
The Vault. What goes on in this kind of vault, Rob?
Look, we're in the Vault inside of Rock and Bowl in downtown Lafayette. People come to tell their
cool.
secrets, but you know it leaks out a little bit. So I'm happy that you're here.
Well, as a storyteller, I love a good secret. It's a pleasure to be here. You and I have known each other for several years. I want to say I first heard of you back in your CNN days, maybe, but. Boy, haven't we?
Past then, during what was it? What was the daughter? Whitney Houston's daughter's death, I think, was when we crossed paths there.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. That happened in Georgia. I forgot about that.
What was it.
Her name? Bobby Brown.
I was about to say, Bobby Christina.
Oh, Bobby Christina. Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah, Bobby Christina. You were out there doing the story, and it was weird because I feel like it was so close to Whitney's death. It's sort of a blur. It's almost like Farrah Fawcett dying the same day as Michael Jackson. People forget that happened on the same exact day.
Dude, I will never forget. Farrah Fawcett would have been the front page news of every newspaper in America the next day. And by 4:00, nobody was talking about it. It was wild. Who will forget that day? Wow.
You know, I remember that was the first story a news director let me confirm exclusively on Twitter. Exclusively using Twitter. No one else had said it. TMZ had it first.
Well, wasn't that what put TMZ on the map?
Oh, that was it. Because Harvey had been doing that stuff for years and years. You know, Harvey was known for bringing a bag of cash into a gas station to get surveillance video. But that was the first real people telling him, we have the ambulance and we know all this stuff is happening. But that was it.
I think it was also the first time such established outlets like CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN mentioned TMZ and sort of gave them the validity that they have now ridden on for, 20 years? I don't know.
Totally. And now you have TMZ DC, you know, which is where the real fun stuff happens.
Let's talk about that. I'm kind of loving it, honestly, because it's like, put the TMZ treatment on our politicians. Yes, go get them.
And find them in restaurants, find them, I'm
kind of loving it. Yeah, I'm kind of loving it.
That's really good. So what are you up to now? You know, I love to cross paths with you. I feel like we see each other at the airport. You know, we generally have plans the same days, or else you're just in airports so much that's just where we see each other. But what's going on in the world of David Begnaud?
Not as much as I used to do in terms of travel. I used to be on the road 200 days a year, and it's certainly more manageable. I would say I try to limit my travel to 5 days a month now, which is almost
that's a big change.
Feels extraordinary. So I continue my role at CBS with a different title. I was the lead national correspondent. And now I've become a contributor so that I can step out, and I started my own company, Do Good Crew. And at the heart of Do Good Crew, well, this is what I was gonna tell you. So this is actually Make Good, which is a NOLA nonprofit. So shout out to my good buddy Noam Platt. Let me tell you about this dude, then I'll come back to me. So Noam Platt is a architect, trained, phenomenal human being in New Orleans who started this nonprofit that uses 3D printed technology to make accessible devices for people who need. And if you don't know about Make Good NOLA, go look them up. I'm telling you, their social media is incredible. They made these wheelchairs, Rob, that could be customized for kids who are on ventilators and have trachs, whatever. And I'm telling you, and the cool thing is they open source this material. So if you live in, Spokane, you can do it for yourself. Noam Platt, shout out, is an angel walking this earth. Anyway, so I'm repping their hat, but it's only because Do Good Crew ain't got hats yet, but it's coming.
Coming.
So at the heart of Do Good Crew, we have a newsletter, which is released every Tuesday as an email. Right into your inbox. And I call it the joy drop, right? It's the thing that you open and you read it and you're like, damn. So all is not lost. And what I wanted to do, Rob, was play into the same algorithm that amplifies all of that bullshit and hatred, right? That goes viral. I want to play in that space, but I want to trip it for a different reason. And that's celebrating everyday people doing extraordinary things. And so the newsletter, we have the podcast, The Person Who Believed in Me, which I'm so happy with how it's going. And then we'll start live events later this fall. And the first live event will be, drum roll please, in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Ready. Wow. Okay, so what do we have to look forward to at that?
So the scoop on that is, I've been hosting the Undercurrent Awards in conjunction with The Current for the last 6 years. This year, it's a co-production between The Current and Do Good Crew. Last year, I took the event and I brought it to television. It aired on ABC, NBC, and CBS in the Lafayette market. First time all three stations have ever collaborated to run a piece of programming at the exact same time. Let me tell you something. I work for Mike Barra at Channel 10 in Lafayette.
Yes.
Mike Barra, God rest his soul, would be steaming right now if he knew that people had come together to run the same thing. I mean, that was just never a possibility. But shout out to Chris Cook at 10, Scene Trichalik at Channel 3, Nanette, who was at Channel 15, but the team that has come in to replace her, and now Channel 3 and 15 are the same. Anyway, this year we're doing it as a live event, and so on October the 4th at the Acadiana Center for the Arts, it will be a celebration of local heroes. And so right now, as I speak to you, the nomination process is open, and I just recorded a couple of promos that will air on all three television stations, just telling people, I'm looking for the nurse, the farmer, the neighbor down the street, the person who is an unsung hero, right? Not the names you already know. It's the Janes and Joes you don't. Those are the people, like at my core, Rob, what I was put on this earth to do, I now believe, is use the platform I've been given to celebrate everyday people doing extraordinary things. Like there is nothing that fires me up more than that. And so we'll do it in Lafayette because I thought, what a hell of a place to kick it off. Then in partnership with CBS Mornings, which has never happened before, we'll take it across the country.
That is really cool. And, it's interesting because you talk about how that content, the vitriolic, the drama tends to get picked up by the algorithms and people find it. But like I'm going through right now, I'm actually reading the article right now about a 3-year-old who's just an amazing, amazing kid. And just that little bit, like, if we can start forwarding that sort of thing to our friend group, how much better is that? Because we all get a million newsletters.
Well, here's so I have two things about that. For people watching or listening, what Rob's referring to is our spotlight lead story in the Do Good Crew newsletter this week was about a young boy in the Midwest who has a condition that requires a wheelchair. And there is a piece of video which will break your heart, which is, he actually has a walker, not a wheelchair, where he's going to a playground, but he can't lift his walker above the curb. And he starts to cry. And let me tell you something, brother. Even the most hardened asshole can watch that video and cry. You know why? Because what I have learned, and the reason I think, Rob, there is an eternity of opportunity for me to do what I do, is because every time I look metaphorically behind the curtain into someone's life, they have a kid with special needs. They have a wife who has this kind of condition. They themselves are taking a pill for something they don't want you to know they have. But at the end of the day, while everything seems great in the Instagram post, there is something that they are dealing with. And so when I tell this story of the boy, what happened with the boy in the Midwest is that an entire community has come together to build this accessible park for kids like him where he can run his walker all over. There are no curbs. And so his family started this slogan, meet me at the curb. You know who that story is about? It's about one person. But you know who that story impacts? Millions. And here's why. You watch that and you say, I can do that in Broward County, Florida. I can do that in San Francisco. I got my cousin's sister friend, next door neighbor's child who also has this. Everybody's got something. It's why I always prefer to have conversations related to struggle. because I think conversations related to success is fun. I mean, look, I like surface level conversation from time to time. I love the Kardashians. It's a life I don't live, and so I live in theirs for an hour.
Yes.
But the kind of shit that I want to do day in and day out does not have to do with success. It has to deal with struggle. Because in the conversations about struggle, we start to get real, and that's where we start to connect. It's what the Person Who Believed in Me podcast hinges on. Oprah was my first guest. Of all the things you could,
just a small guest to kick things off, David.
Name drop there. So Oprah sits in the chair, and you think, okay, well, I know about Oprah. I've seen everything Oprah has to say. What's Oprah going to say that's going to interest me?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. I got a message from one of the top agents in Hollywood, and he said to me, "I've done millions of dollars of business with Oprah over 30 years. I have not seen her like that." Now, that's not because I'm the best. It's because of the format that I created. It's the best. The Person Who Believed in Me. The big name like Oprah sits down, and we start talking about, and this is a real story, 16 years old, cafeteria, Nicolet High School, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The black girls, she said, didn't want to talk to her because they thought she talked too much like she was white. Okay? And so she was ostracized. There was a man who was doing research at the school because they were about to begin the integration of literally busing black kids to white schools to integrate them. And so this monitor, if you will, this researcher, meets this girl, and something about her impresses him. And so he says, do you like to read? She says, I love to read. He says, read this book. She comes back the next day. She's read it front to back. He says, read this book. Well, this goes on for days. And this man becomes really enamored with this sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
And then he puts her as name number one on the list of kids we're going to bus across town to the white high school. And just the whole episode involved things that otherwise Oprah's not going to be asked about, right? When I sat across from Sharon Stone, you say Sharon Stone and people talk about the legs and the scene and Basic Instinct, and all of that is real. But when you go watch that Sharon Stone episode, you better buckle up, because we didn't talk about fame. We talked about everything related to real everyday life, and it's been one of our most watched episodes. Anyway, Rob, I just kind of like you, we are both storytellers. I'm bored by red carpet conversations. What are red carpet conversations? That which focuses on the veneer. I'm much more interested in the heartbreak and the heartache.
Well, and don't you find that those are the things that actually bring people together, that we can actually have in common? It's like the Anderson Cooper project about grief. It's something we all go through, but when it happens, you are on an island. It's like, 100%. Oh gosh, I'm the first person to ever lose a grandmother, and then you start to talk about it, and everyone has the same thing. I think it's fascinating, and I'm going to say sort of the modern day Mr. Rogers, in the way that he didn't make people afraid of the world or afraid of bad things happening. Bad things happen, but then there's an after. Then there's a beyond.
So I'm glad you bring that up, because I was on the ground in Pittsburgh when the Tree of Life synagogue massacre took place. And I just got the chills across my body as I say it. I was field anchoring from the scene. And I remember one of our writers, who's been at CBS for 40 years, wrote me an email, and he said, David, you may not know this, and I didn't. Mr. Rogers is from that neighborhood. And Mr. Rogers used to always say, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I'll get most of it right, in times of crisis, look for the helpers. And I remember standing there and thinking, that's who I want to be. Because remember, my career was built on the backs of other people's suffering. Where there was mayhem, I've been to more school shootings than I can count. I've knocked on more doors of mothers and fathers whose kids have had their heads blown off at school than I can ever want to remember. Massacre was my middle name. I remember, Rob, in 2016, I was getting on a plane to go to a mass shooting every 45 days. And I remember saying to myself, I guess this is just going to be our future. And it
Yeah.
was such
Yeah.
and it wasn't just a mass shooting. Most of them I was going to were school shootings. And I remember thinking, like coming to terms with it and in some way being okay with it. Like, because it was like okay with it in the sense that I can't control it. And so I let
Mhm.
go of the hope that I can control it. And so I'm just going to go cover it. But I remember thinking, I don't know that I have the emotional bandwidth or sanity to do that. So back to Mr. Rogers. I instead of being the guy who went to cover the disaster, I wanted to be the guy now who goes to the disaster to find the helpers, to
Mhm.
help bring in the
Yeah.
helpers, to help amplify the work of the helpers, that kind of stuff.
You sort of have this similar experience of me of covering news in your backyard where you live, where you shop, and then also,
Hmm.
like you said, going to Pittsburgh where you didn't live, and you can fly in, you can field anchor. It's super emotional, but then you get to get on a plane and you get to go home. I remember in 2015, the Grand Theater shooting. It was the first big news story after we moved home from Atlanta. And I remember just almost feeling like I had taken an exit ramp off of this life because I just wrapped up all this time in Atlanta of, the two cell phones, two laptops, whole life. And I remember I was washing my kids' hair. They were young, 1 and 2, and they were in the bathtub when someone called and said this happened. And I just remember driving over there thinking, and I get chills now thinking about it, like, no, this wasn't supposed to happen here because I'm home now. I left that. And so then to watch all these people who I've been working with now come to my backyard, it's a completely different thing. What is your sort of thoughts about
So
that?
remember when I told you my career is built on the people, on the backs of
Yeah.
other people suffering? Literally, my first story for CBS Mornings and the CBS Evening News was the Grand Theater shooting. And the reason I smiled when you mentioned it was because Acadiana brings back fond memories. I'm not smiling about the shooting, but obviously I'm so proud of home and where I came from. But that's literally where my career started. I was on the desk in New York anchoring for our streaming channel CBSN, and I remember I was trying to break into the network. And at the time, I was reporting for the Saturday morning show, which had such phenomenal storytelling. And I loved it. It really helped me hone my skills on telling stories that are 6 7 minutes and just really well told. And so I just wanted to cut into the daily shows. And lo and behold, I go in the newsroom, and I'll never forget saying to the woman who is still there and a dear friend of mine, I can go. I'm from there. And she kind of gave me this look like, okay, thank you. Why don't you go back to what you're doing? So I
Exactly.
go
Yeah.
back and so I go back
Go
and I
back
get
to your
on
Saturday show
yeah,
rundown.
yeah. So I go back and I get on the desk and I keep anchoring. And then I get off again and I call Dee Stanley, who was news director when I was at KLFY, but at the time of the theater shooting was the chief administrative officer for Lafayette Parish. And I get all this information. And then I think I called Randall Mann and I got
Yeah.
all this information. And I walk back in the newsroom and I tell the lady, and she swivels and she's like, how do you know all that? So I told her, and that was it. She was like, okay, so they put me on a plane, but they didn't put me on the plane. Guess who put me on the plane? Entertainment Tonight. I'm giving you some inside
Yeah.
baseball stuff here. So I fly to Lafayette and I'm there to report for Entertainment Tonight because remember it was at a movie
Amy
theater, right? It
Schumer.
was an
Amy Schumer movie.
That's right. That's
Yep.
right. And so lo and behold, CBS says, well, if you're there for ET, you might as well do something for us. And so I was able to deliver the headlines that nobody else had because I had all the contacts.
Yep.
And so, I remember there was there was a girl who was in the theater watching the movie, and her sister was one of the medics that responded to the scene. And she imagine you walk in the theater, and one of the people is your sister. Now she wasn't shot, thank God, but her sister. Anyway, I interviewed the two of them, and but I don't know the right word to use, Rob, but can you understand the
Yeah.
wildness of my first big network story and ability to prove myself being in my hometown, but yet again, it was amid people's unimaginable suffering. So it's not something you brag about. You're not like,
Yeah.
look at this, It's not. It's like our Super Bowl in news, in terms of like the biggest story of our career, is almost never a good story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but now my Super Bowls are good stories. Now they're good news stories.
I love that you found that niche because, again, it's not the flashy. It's not the, I mean, it's gut-wrenching in many situations. I'll tell you, if I'm going to say what David Begnaud's story do I think about all the time, it's from, I think, maybe 4 years ago. It was a guy named Brandon who was in a car accident, was married, absolutely incapacitated. And she made the difficult decision to actually go through with a divorce. She wanted to have kids, but she petitioned the judge that she was always going to take care of him. And now it's this family. I mean, I actually was thinking about it knowing I was going to talk to you today, and I watched it again this morning. And it brought me right back to just, the world's a great place. These things that happen, because those stories, though, you found this one and they told it, and it seems like, oh my gosh, how many unsung heroes are there that are doing something like that? Maybe not to that extent, but for no thank you at all. They're just doing it because it's the right thing to do. By the way, I'm going to link that story because it's still one of my favorite. When my kids are now 11 and 12, when they're afraid of the world outside the door, I show them stuff like that. Okay, we see this bad thing happen, but look at this that's happening as well. It's just a balance.
When you tell that story, everything you just told, I knew what I was going to get. And by the way, it almost never happened because I had come across the story and like CBSnews.com did the story. Yeah. And so I pitched it to my senior in New York and he was like, well, I don't know. We've already done it. The woman's like super active on TikTok. Oh. And I've like earned the cachet now to basically say, here's what I want to do and I'm going to go do it. And it's not that I tell them what to do or I tell them what they should let me do. I've earned the respect from them to say, all right, if he's that hot about it, go. So I go to Texas and I know everything that you just said. What I didn't know, Rob, and what made me, as you remember, kind of get teary-eyed, was when I sat this woman. So as Rob tells the story, this woman marries this guy. They're high school sweethearts. He gets in a horrific accident. She is his sole individual caretaker. And then decides to divorce him, but tells the judge, I'm asking you to give me the obligation legally and the right to be his guardian. And I wondered for a long time why she did that. And I think it had something to do with, basically maybe married. I think they couldn't get the proper insurance to take care of him.
I'm sure.
Right. And so divorced, he would be indigent, right? And so he would qualify for, okay. Anyway, so I go to do this story and her new husband, who she's had 2 kids with, James, is there. I'm like, hey, James, can we talk to you too? So we sit James down and Rob, that man said to me, I have told Kristen that if Brandon, the first husband, were to ever have, by some miracle, a rebound, and he could be himself again, I would want him and her to be together again. And I'm like, holy, what the you're right. I'm looking around. Yeah. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This man just said that. And then he dropped this bomb. And then he dropped this bomb. He said, and I've told Kristen that if anything ever happens to her, I will continue to take care of Brandon. Now, look, I'm here to tell you that laid me out. Me out. And it laid everybody else out because the story has millions and millions of views. But that's the kind of stuff, Rob. And what I would say about storytelling or just, storytelling in general is I almost never do a story that has no struggle. If your story is devoid of struggle and trauma, or you're not willing to talk about the struggle and trauma, I say, thank you very much, but not right for me. If you are willing to go there, because Rob, you only get a rainbow after a thunderstorm. Ooh, you can't tell the story of the rainbow without the story about the storm.
Mm-hmm. Even if you don't want to talk about the rain.
It's fine.
It doesn't just come out of nowhere.
That's fine. And on the other side of a thunderstorm, there is always a rainbow. You may miss it. You may not be there, but there's always a rainbow on the other side of a storm.
David Begnaud is with us. You're listening to Kirkpatrick and Company. We're going to take a quick break. Special thanks to Catalyst Bank for making this project possible. We're going to be back with more after this. Kirkpatrick and Company is brought to you by Catalyst Bank. If you're looking for a bank that actually knows Acadiana, you want Catalyst Bank. They've been serving the community for over 100 years, and that's not just history, that's trust. Catalyst Bank is built for local businesses, for local families, for real life. Their mission is simple: be a catalyst for economic growth right here at home. You get the best of both worlds: big bank technology, mobile access, and digital tools that keep up with you, and something you don't always get anymore: real hometown service. Call a branch, a real person answers. Need a loan? Decisions are made locally. That means faster answers and more flexibility. From commercial lending to personal banking, they're here with you for every step. Catalyst Bank, fueling business, improving lives. Visit catalystbank.com or stop by a local branch today. David Begnaud, our guest on Kirkpatrick and Company, virtually inside the vault in Rock and Roll in downtown Lafayette. So, David, you have done something that, if anyone's been listening to this conversation so far, you didn't necessarily set out to do. I mean, other than being able to tell these great stories, and you've been a storyteller since, before you turned 18. We know the story. I love that, I love that you've become this sort of enigma in our area that I tell someone I'm talking to you today, and then the degrees of separation come out. Well, David's cousin, it was my next door neighbor's person that cut my hair. And that's what I love, by the way, about living here.
Me too.
It's really cool, And so I just, first of all, it's so cool to see someone. And like I said, we crossed paths. I mean, man, it's been 15 years ago, probably 13, 15 years ago, actually chatting with each other. And hey, here we are at this crossroads. And it's so funny just to see that now you've morphed to be able to do a little bit more. We talked a little bit about Do Good Crew, the podcast as well. Sort of, what do you want this to become? What is your biggest hopes, not to put you on the spot, but for Do Good Crew now?
So, Rob, right now I'm focused on building a community, right? So a dream of mine is to have these live events where the people who subscribe to our newsletter and or watch the podcast and or see me on CBS come to sit next to somebody named Rob, right? How cool is it if Rob sits next to a dude named Steve and you guys connect over the story we just talked about, which is that's the kind of stuff that I want to bring about, right? The success of my company is going to, I believe, to a large degree, have to do with my ability to build a community. And that community is global. I'm telling you, the podcast, I had a meeting yesterday with the head of a Jewish school in Perth, Australia, who saw the podcast, The Person Who Believed in Me, and literally is going to make it a part of the student body challenge for next year, where they will all be paired up with someone older than them. They will conduct this conversation about, tell me, Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so, who believed in you. The best video then gets put on social media. We will share. Like, okay, is it a big deal? Maybe not. But you know what? It's a real big deal to me because I want to do that in Perth and Tokyo and Buenos Aires and Spokane. I want people everywhere to say, I saw that and it made me think of so-and-so, and so I wrote to him. I saw, and that's the beauty behind what we're doing. It's also tough, Rob, for me to call somebody and say, hey, this is David with Do Good Crew. Will you help me? Right. It's tough to have somebody say no. Because it's like, you really want to say no to something called Do Good Crew that does what we do. So I want to bring people together. I want to celebrate the good. I want to showcase the good. And then I want to go out. Something we will also have to do that I was not able to do at CBS is actually do some good. I am tired of standing on the other side of yellow tape, caution tape, do not cross tape, and not being able to intervene and help in some way. And so now I have the permission to be as involved as I want to actually do some good. Not just report on the good, not just hope that you'll help me do some good, but go do some good myself. So I'm excited.
It's funny because I didn't say this before and I had this nag, but this conversation is about you, not me, but something, it just keeps coming back to me. maybe the best piece of personal and professional advice I ever got was my grandfather, from the time I was 18 and got my first, TV job, said every time he was, by the way, he was like a hawkish contract guy. So he was the guy I always sent a contract to, and he'd be like, actually on page 4, we're going to redline this out. You're not doing that, And he would make me call every time I got a new job, everyone else who had hired me before.
Is that
And
right?
he's like, don't send an email. Don't send a text. You need to call for 2 reasons. He's like, number one, they are invested in you because they believed in you to hire you at some point, even though, because of course, you know how things go. Sometimes you leave out the door, they never want to see you again. Sometimes that's just the nature of the business. But I always really tried to make sure that when I was back in town, I'd stop in. I'm going to be in Dallas this weekend. I'm going to see the new Fox 4 building because I'm invested in what they're doing still, even though I worked there, 15 years ago. And he said, like, they're invested in you because they took a chance one time. So every success that you have is really another thumbs up that they made a good choice. And so I started doing that. And David, when I tell you, because, we get around in this business, it's 11 or 12 phone calls, and every time it's the best conversation. It's the best conversation to people who you were like, oh man, you really did take a risk on me when I didn't know left from right, and I was really batting above where I should have been, and you took a chance. So I think that's a really good piece of advice for people who are moving their way up the corporate ladder or in whatever they're doing, is to remember those people who, whether you left on good terms or not, they believed you enough to pick you over someone else.
People, human beings, are used to two things. They're used to people asking them for things because they're needed, or they're used to being criticized or fussed at for something. People are so not used to a phone call that says, hey, tell me who believed in you. Because you know what that does? It actually asks nothing of that individual other than to shine a light on someone else. And so the cool thing about the work I do is none of it involves shining a light on me or putting me on a pedestal. I've said to my team many times, we will not put me as some kind of halo creature over something called Do Good Crew. The name is already, good enough. I glow in the ambient light, right? I shine this light outward, and then I glow in whatever light is created from that. And so there is, for me at least, longevity in celebrating others. And I also become a better human being. I'm a softer, kinder, more thoughtful, more patient, not less driven, but I'm a better human being every time I engage in some type of good. In fact, I say this all the time. When I have, and they don't happen that often at this point in my life, but whenever I'm having a really bad day, again, which doesn't happen often, but to get myself out of it, I will force myself to get up and go do something for someone else. Right? I'll give you a story on the 4th of July. And I was having a very good 4th of July. But the highlight of my 4th of July was someone I met in a supermarket at the register. We were in line, and Jeremy and I were paying. Jeremy's my partner of 14 years. And in front of me was a man who appeared to be from the Middle East, dressed like you and I were dressed. And he had a hot dog and buns and cupcakes with confetti. And the woman bagging the groceries said, hey, you going to a party with your family? And he said, no, my family is all living in Iraq. And so I met some folks recently, and I'm going to their party, and I'm going to bring this. And the woman says, oh, that's so nice. Happy 4th of July. And I looked at this man, and I thought, this guy is buying everything that we are, everything that we celebrate and participating in it. And I said to him, sir, happy 4th of July. And he turned to me almost as like I caught him off guard. And with a smile, he said, thank you. And I said, no, thank you, because you make us a better place. You make us a better place. Rob, not to get political, but when I go around the country and I hear people saying some hateful, racist, and obnoxious bullshit about immigrants, I want to remind people that my ancestors, the Acadians, were kicked out of another place and literally came to this place because they were looking for a refuge. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating for open borders, and I want to be tough on crime. But you know what? Every one of us, to some degree, is an immigrant whose family had a dream and needed someone to believe in them and give them a chance. And so I'll stop there before I get too animated.
All right. We love to end every episode with a really quick lightning round, some quick answers, quick
I
questions.
love a lightning round. Go.
All right. What is the guest, the one person you've interviewed who you think about the most, who's made the biggest impact?
It's not a person, it's a story, and it's the hurricane in Puerto Rico.
What's one Louisiana town you think everyone should visit at least once?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh boy, that's a really good question. Natchitoches.
Natchitoches, home of the meat pies.
Dude, it is so quintessentially just special. Yeah, Natchitoches.
If there's a food from home, what is the food from home you miss the most?
Bro, come on, I can give you this right away. Crawfish etouffee.
Crawfish etouffee. Light colored or dark colored? Deep orange crawfish etouffee.
Great question. A little bit darker.
Okay.
But not the red, not that red crap. But also,
No, yeah, you
not
don't go
like-
too red.
Don't go too red. Don't go too red. No.
And
Nobody
finally-
makes it better than my mother. Okay, finally.
Always. And
Yes,
finally,
yes.
if I could deliver any guest, any interview to your front door right now, who's someone on your bucket list that you have got to interview before they're gone or you're gone?
The Pope.
Oh,
The Pope.
Great
The
one.
Pope because he's American, because I think he is empathetic, and I believe that empathy is the ultimate evolution. Did you hear that? Empathy is the ultimate evolution. And because, all right, I'm gonna go deep on you here.
yeah, let's do it.
Because I was born Catholic, went to Catholic school all my life, Carrico Catholic, St. Genevieve, St. Leo Seton, Our Lady of Fatima, and Turlings. And later, the chancellor of the school said he is not welcome on campus because we don't want to give the impression that being openly gay is condonable. Right? I wrote an editorial in the Times-Picayune about this. The Pope, to go back to the Pope, I believe the Pope is someone who understands that all of us are made just the way God intended. And so the reason I'd like to interview the Pope is that I think the Pope is not only the right man for the moment, but I think the Pope is what I see God to be. I am who the good Lord made me to be. Okay? I change clothes and I make choices about what I wear. I drive nice cars and I choose the car I want to drive. I do not choose who I am attracted to in terms of orientation, right? And so the Pope for me is a man who I feel a connection to. And Rob, you're going to hear it here first, so I'm going to put it out there. I think I'm going to get the Pope. Now, I don't think he's coming to my studio in Los Angeles. We might have to go to the Vatican, but I would love nothing more than to get the Pope. Can I turn it around on you? Who's the person I could deliver to you that you want more than anybody?
You know what's really crazy is when I wrote the question, mine was also the Pope, but I feel like I should think of something different. But do you know why?
Was it really
Do you
the
know why
Pope?
I will say, do you know why mine is the Pope?
Why?
Because around here, so I also grew up Catholic school, Catholic.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I marry a girl who grew up in the Episcopal Church, and her dad is an Episcopal deacon. And so you know what happens when you do that. That's where I go to church now. And the number one reason that you hear of people, there aren't a lot of people who are born Episcopalian. There are a lot of people who used to be Catholic and didn't have a church home because of a same-sex marriage, because of a different lifestyle. And so when you hear those stories, so there's a really interesting one about a couple churches here. I won't say who they are. I don't want to implicate anyone, but went to a church for 30 years, had an openly same-sex marriage, relationship, and volunteered, and the priest changed, and they were told they couldn't volunteer anymore. And so you're leaving 30 years of involvement, of investment in a church home. And the story is that, kind of in the depths of despair, saw another church, an Episcopal church, that had sheep on their front lawn of every color, rainbow sheep, pink sheep, yellow sheep, black sheep, white sheep, and said all sheep are welcome here. And that was the move they made, and that was like 20 years ago.
I will never forget, Rob, I was in Santa Monica, California, where I went to St. Monica's Church. It's a church famously of Arnold Schwarzenegger. The whole choir is filled with, when Arnold was governor, he and Maria would go there all the time, filled with American Idol people in the choir, all that. And Monsignor Lord Torgerson, I'll never forget, I was sent on a Sunday. I was working at KTLA in Los Angeles, and there were pirates who had abducted 2 individuals who were sailing around the Horn of Africa, basically distributing Bibles. And they were abducted by Somali pirates and later killed. But before we knew they were dead, I had gone to the church because they were parishioners of the church. And I will never, ever, ever, ever forget the open where they sang this beautiful hymn. And Monsignor had this thing that he would speak in the middle of the song where he would say, all are welcome. If you're divorced, you are welcome. If you are gay, you are welcome. If you are, and literally he went through almost everybody who represents anybody in the church. And I remember I signed up to be a parishioner. I had never signed up to be a parishioner of a church before. I just went to church because my mom and daddy said, where are you going to church, right? I'm now on the roll. But I will say in conclusion, this conversation is not for me. I've got whatever I need. Like, I have a great life. This conversation is for anyone who's listening to hear me very clearly. The degree to which you were able to love is important because you will have a child who maybe one day is gay, or a niece, or a neighbor, or someone you just want to make sure is okay in this world. No one is asking you to agree with anything they do or who they are. All people are asking you to do is love them. Love them. It's not your job to understand. It's just your job to love. And that's why I speak about this kind of stuff. It ain't for me. I don't need anything. I'm good. It's for the generation who will come next. They just want to be loved for who God made them to be. How you like a little church on your podcast, Rob?
I love it. And there's nothing else I can say. I sort of want to say peace be with you and with your spirit. But, even though I'm old school, I still say and also with you under my breath, David, thank you so much for the time.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. Thank you for the invitation. And you know how much I love staying connected to Acadiana. And so thank you for the invitation.